inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And hello again, everybody, and welcome in to another Tuesday night edition of Tider Insider TV. As you heard in the open, it's brought to you by Don Staley and all the good folks at Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. We love to drink out of the great beverage holders that they provide for us. What do you call those things, Rodney? My mind just went blank.
So did mine.
Does anybody know what you call these things? All right, we just both went blank on it. Tumblers. They are great tumblers there, Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. All right, Rod, Alabama basketball was in action twice since last week's show as they were in Auburn for a matchup with the Tigers last Tuesday, and then back home on Saturday night. They hosted the fifth-ranked Kentucky Wildcats. By the way, I don't know, I got hung up on the tumblers. He's Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Alabama went 3 for 30 from three-point range this past Saturday night in that 66-55 loss at home to Kentucky. That's a woeful 10%. Now, Alabama lives and dies by the three-pointer, and that's nothing new, but going 3 for 30 just isn't going to lead to many wins, particularly against a team as talented as fifth-ranked Kentucky. Coach Oates was asked about the Tide's three-point shooting struggles and whether he should look at changing the team's offensive approach. I have a little more on that in a moment. Alabama has now lost 3 of its last 4 and falls to 14-9 overall, 4-6 in the SEC. But the Crimson Tide schedule does rank #1 in the nation in every major rating system. So that's pretty good. After the game, head coach Nate Oates said his team's inconsistent play goes beyond its poor shooting, though. He did not think the effort at the defensive end was as good all the time as it needed to be, and Coach Oates thinks many of the issues are related.
I thought our shot making affected it as the game went on. I didn't think we played as hard as we needed to for the entire 40. I really was disappointed in some of our guys' effort as the game continued to go on, as they missed shots. And if you're going to let shot making on offense dictate effort on defense, it's losing basketball. And that definitely contributed to our win tonight.
All right, let me bring Rod in. Coach Oates was asked after the game by Nick Kelly from the Tuscaloosa News about would he consider changing his offensive approach when things aren't working. And I even wondered that. But he had a great answer, I thought, Rodney. First of all, you're not going to change it during a game. You can't do that. And this team plays just the way his first two teams played when they were breaking records for three-point shots made in games. And that's who they've recruited to play this type of system, where they're going to spread the floor, dribble, drive, attack the basket, kick it out for threes. They don't really have a low-post offensive threat or somebody that they run a low-post offensive through, Rodney. He said pretty much this is who they are. They've just got to do what they do better than they've been doing it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the question is, Gary, and I mean, you follow it. You follow it really closely. You know, they've recruited players that fit the system. Mm-hmm. He said that. You know, what is it? Why aren't they shooting well? Why aren't they shooting better? Why are they having these inconsistencies? And I think that's the thing that, you know, is it confidence? Is it things that, you know, in terms of just some of the experience that they're playing together? Whatever it is, you know, they're just not shooting the ball well on a consistent basis. And you mentioned it. What was it, 3 for 30? Is that what it was, Gary? I mean, it just, you know, just incredibly poor shooting.
Yeah, it's 10% from 3. Didn't shoot it from 2 either. If they shot just a little bit better, they could have won that game against Kentucky. Now, Tuesday night at Auburn, after getting it back to a 2-point game in the second half, down 14 at the break, Auburn ran away and wound up scoring 100 points on Alabama. But I was at the Kentucky game, Rod, and you mentioned the shooting was. I can tell you this, just my impression, that was, I don't ever remember seeing this under Coach Oates. I actually looked out there at those players and felt like I saw them lose their confidence. I don't think they thought the ball was going to go in.
Well, that's kind of what I was alluding to, was the confidence factor. And, you know, the fact is that, as you said, Gary, the shooting has been the key. And, you know, how do you get this on track? Is it just a confidence factor in terms of getting hot, getting your confidence back? Because we know, like Shackelford, you know, he did it last year, you know, so we'll see.
Yeah, Coach Oates continues to say that he believes he has good shooters. And when you have good shooters, eventually they're going to make shots. It needs to start tomorrow night, though, at Ole Miss, that's for sure.
Well, let me ask you, Gary. You know these guys. You followed them in recruiting. Do you feel like they fit the system? Do you feel like these guys are shooters?
I do. I mean, like you said, Shaq, I think Quinterly can make them. You know, J.D. is more of a slasher. Getting Darius Miles, who I think can make three-pointers back. He was on suspension in the game against Kentucky, can help them. I think they're better shooters than they're showing right now. I will say this. At the guard position, Alabama's a little undersized in regards to height. And You extend the defense on them. I think they're getting people up into them when they're trying to shoot threes. And when they drive to the basket, Shaq and Quinterly and J.D. Davidson, those guys, they're running into some guys that are 6, 8 inches taller than them. So I think that has been an issue too, Rod. And it's something they've just got to keep working on because, you know what, they need to score some points in this league to win games. Well, now it's time for Coach Talk. Last week, Alabama announced its plans for Phase 2 of the Crimson Standard, which includes a new athletic competition arena for basketball and gymnastics. And as Alabama Athletics Director Greg Byrne explains, the focus for this project was the atmosphere that it's going to have. And don't confuse that with a large number of seats, because this arena is actually going to be about 5,000 seats less than Coleman Coliseum.
I've heard some of the feedback, hey, you need to have whatever the number is, 12,000, 15,000, whatever it is. You know what the most challenging seats are to sell in an arena? The ones up top.
Extremely appreciative of the Board of Trustees.
All right, this arena for men's and women's basketball as well as gymnastics is going to be awesome. But they're also going to have a golf practice facility that's going to be unbelievable, a 9-hole course. But when you look at this new arena, Rod, and there's the golf, beautiful golf home that they're going to have, this is going to be unbelievable. Seating will cap at a little over 10,000 seats, about 5,000 less than Coleman Coliseum. It's expected to be a $183 million project. 1968, Coleman Coliseum was built for $4.2 million. And at the time, Coleman Coliseum was the 5th largest college basketball arena in the nation. Rodney, that is wild. But this is something we've talked about for a long time. Coleman Coliseum, I still think, is a much better facility than it's given credit for. But let's be honest, the perception is that it's not very good. You've heard it all, armory, airplane hangar, all those things. The seats are a long way from the floor other than the few they put on the actual playing surface. And for the students, and this Alabama student section, man, they are unbelievable. They have really turned out. They want to be closer to the action and be able to affect the opposing team more. This is going to allow that to happen.
Well, I think this is something that a lot of people kind of think is overdue. I know one thing for sure, Gary, even though the basketball teams had some struggles here the last week or two, this created a ton of excitement. I mean, this was a talk on TiderInsider.com for a few days. It's dominated conversation. So I know that basketball fans, Alabama basketball fans, and you know the program as a whole with Nate Oates really excited about this new facility.
Yeah, and I think the student support and the students being so visible on social media saying, hey, we want to be able to affect the game more, had a lot to do with this, because initially the Crimson Standard Initiative called for a refurbishing of Coleman Coliseum. Those plans were junked, and now a new arena is coming in. And I'll say this too, Rodney, I think the success that Auburn has had with its 9,000-seat arena, but with its student section, the Jungle, being right there on top of the other teams, I do think that probably was a factor too. And Alabama saying, hey, you look at the facility at Auburn, you look at the facility at Ole Miss, that's where we're headed. You know, maybe smaller arenas, but more of a home court advantage.
Well, I tell you, there's a lot of people that frankly think that Auburn facility is the best atmosphere in college basketball. So perhaps it did have a lot of influence.
Yeah, of course, the Alabama women are going to benefit from this as well. And they benefited from a badly needed win this past Sunday in Nashville. Alabama defeated Vanderbilt 77-71 in overtime. It improved Alabama to 12-10 overall, more importantly, 3-8 in the SEC. They had only had 2 wins against Auburn. That was it in conference play. But this is their 7th in a row over Vanderbilt. So they got Vandy's number lately. It was a good win for the Tide. They're still, you know, under 500 in conference play, but every win is important. Last year, of course, Alabama went to the NCAA tournament and won a game. That looks like a long shot this year, but that was a nice win on Sunday up in Nashville. Well, still to come on Tider Insider TV, the Crimson Tide puts the ink on the paper with 3 new coaches for its football staff, and another one seems like he is on the way as well. And Alabama defensive coordinator Pete Golding arrested for a DUI last week. He's apologized for his actions. We'll update the situation there and what disciplinary action might be coming when we come back. Also, of course, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number 205-348-WVOA. That's 205-348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen, or you can tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider Television. Alabama defensive coordinator Pete Golding arrested last Thursday morning around 1 a.m. in Northport, charged with DUI. He was booked into the Tuscaloosa County Jail. He released a statement Thursday afternoon apologizing for his actions and added that he did not uphold the values that he has for himself or the values of the Alabama football program, and he said he's committed to learning and growing from the incident. Welcome back to TITV, sponsored by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. The Alabama Athletic Department also released a statement. Rodney, here is part of the statement from Coach Golding first. Quote, I am committed to learning and growing from this mistake, and I will work to earn back the trust of those who I have disappointed. That's part of the quote from his statement. Now, this past season, Alabama ranked 7th in total defense and 13th in scoring defense. Golding joined the Alabama staff in 2018 as co-defensive coordinator, was promoted to defensive coordinator in 2019. He's also one of Alabama's strongest recruiters. He had a great recruiting cycle for 2022. And Rodney, listen, he made a mistake, and I do not want to minimize what he did because it is a mistake, and he's going to have to pay for it. I have been asked a lot, and I know you have as well. We talked about it on my radio show, his status going forward. My feeling is, just my opinion, that he'll have to do whatever he needs to do legally. I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Saban has some steps for him to take as far as learning from this, but I do expect him to be on the staff in 2022.
Yeah, I get asked the same thing. Will he be back? I think he will, Gary. And again, I agree with you. He'll have things that he'll have to do. But at the same time, like you said, and I think he said it perfectly, this is an opportunity for him to learn and grow from this. He knew it was a mistake. But hopefully he does learn and grow from this and moves forward.
All right, as far as Nick Saban is concerned, I think he's going to be the coach here at Alabama for as long as he wants to be. But the fact remains that he has not had a single coaching staff carry over intact from one season to the next. Not since he's been here. That continues this year. 3 new hires announced last week. Eric Walford will be the new offensive line coach. He comes from the University of Kentucky, where his group was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award last year. Travaris Robinson will be the new cornerbacks coach. He's coached at 3 different schools in the SEC, played at Auburn, great recruiter from Miami. That's going to be really valuable in recruiting there in South Florida. Coleman Hutzler will be the new special teams coordinator and outside linebackers coach. He comes from Ole Miss, where he did a great job with their special teams, and has also been a former defensive coordinator. And Alabama is also expected to hire former Georgia quarterback Joe Cox, who was an assistant at South Carolina and also most recently at Charlotte. And he has not been officially announced yet, but we expect that. Rodney, 4 new coaches, and interestingly enough, they all have something in common. They were on Will Muschamp's staff together a couple years ago at South Carolina.
Yeah, that is amazing, really is. And, you look at Eric Wolford, Gary, I think he's got a tremendous reputation, did a great job. Let's be honest, Kentucky doesn't bring in those 5-star offensive line recruits. You have to do an excellent job of developing those players. He did that. They were Joe Moore Award finalists this past season. So obviously he does a great job coaching, developing. And I've talked to some high school coaches that have had players recruited by him. They say a lot of very positive things about him. We know about Travaris Robinson, T-Rob. He's certainly one of the elite recruiters in the country, an outstanding coach. He talked about his experience with Muschamp. He knows defense. Not really as familiar with Coleman Hutzler as a recruiter, but I know he's an outstanding coach. Obviously, he was also at Texas, did some co-defensive coordinator there under Tom Herman. So he's got a lot of great experience. Joe Cox, that expected to be hired, as you mentioned, as the tight ends coach. Again, he's a young coach. Obviously was a player not that long ago, so he brings some youth and enthusiasm, I think, to the staff.
All right, and he is expected to coach tight ends. Rod, last week at this time, we said that Alabama probably was only looking to sign one player, the tight end, Danny Lewis Jr. out of Westgate High School in New Iberia, Louisiana. And Alabama got its man. There you see it right there. He's going to take off his high school shirt and show the Alabama colors. He signed with the Crimson Tide over LSU, Florida. His previous committed school, Cincinnati and Indiana on National Signing Day. Just a 3-star, but he is a fast riser in terms of his talent.
You know what, Gary, when you look at tight ends, you really look for guys who have this kind of frame. He's 6'4", he's 240 or 250, somewhere in that range, a guy that's got the ability to become an inline blocker, physical player, and you talked about his athleticism. He's an excellent basketball player, so he has the ability, has the instincts that you look for. Gary, I understand he's also a really good pitcher. Has a 90-plus mile-an-hour fastball. Maybe Bohannon needs to look at
maybe he'll play 2 sports when he gets to Alabama. And Rod, Alabama finished 2nd in the national recruiting rankings behind Texas A&M, so another top 3 class. It's just the norm. It's what you expect every year with Nick Saban in Alabama.
Yeah, it really is. It's incredible. And, Gary, we talked about this last week, too. On top of these, 24 that they signed, you've got 3 great players coming in in terms of the transfers. So really great class overall.
All right, coming up next on Tider Insider TV, details following the tragic death of former Alabama running back Santonio Beard. That's coming up next. And we'll also be getting your phone calls on the way, 205-348-9882. We'd love to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. Whatever you want to ask us or comment on, give us a call at 205-348-9882, and we will get you on air. There is the email and the Twitter handle as well if you want to reach out to us that way. Tider Insider TV will return right after this. Well, the Alabama family is really mourning the loss of Santonio Beard. The former Crimson Tide running back died from a gunshot wound last Friday in Lithonia, Georgia, basically metro Atlanta, just 41 years old. He was going to turn 42 later this month. No arrests have been made yet in the case. During his 3 seasons with the Crimson Tide, he was outstanding. 32 games, 1,444 yards, and 16 rushing touchdowns. Known best for these 2 performances. In 2002, he had 5 touchdowns against Ole Miss, which tied Sean Alexander's record. And then in the 2001 Iron Bowl, he went crazy. Nearly 200 yards rushing, right? He had a couple long runs called back. He could have had 250 in that game as he just lit the Tigers' defense up. And I know you and I both got to know him pretty well. This was a time in the late 90s, early 2000s when you could interview the players. You had much more access than you do now. And the thing I remember about Santonio, and he's had some issues since his playing days, as a lot of people have, was that engaging smile, that charming personality. He could light up a room, man.
He really could. I love Santonio, Gary, and I go all the way back to the late 90s with him when he was being recruited. And, you know, having
was it Pearl Cone High School?
Pearl Cone in Nashville. Had a lot of opportunities to, you know, talk to Santonio, interview Santonio, got to know him really well. And he was a fantastic kid. I love Santonio, and you know, I really hate this, but, you know, one thing I want to say about him is he genuinely loved Alabama.
Yes, he did.
He had a really difficult time picking Alabama. There was a lot of pressure for him to go to Tennessee. He was from a Tennessee high school, Pearl Cone. They had sent a lot of players to Tennessee, but Santonio stood strong. He always dreamed of playing here. And to the day he passed away, I know he loved Alabama.
Yeah, just tragic, as I said, and set to turn 42 years old later this month. Gone way too soon. We, along with Bama Nation, his friends and family, all mourn his passing. All right, let's get to the phone lines. Bill is with us first up tonight over in Birmingham. Hey, Bill, good evening. How are you?
Hey, doing great, guys. Who do you think can replace Jamison Williams? Do we have somebody on the team or anybody we have recruited? And just that's about basically it. Roll Tide.
Bill, you know, it's a great question because that type of speed, all these guys are fast that play wide receiver in the SEC, but Williams had next level speed. You're just not going to, you may not find another guy that runs as fast as him for a long time. You know, Alabama had Henry Ruggs and then Williams, but they've got some good candidates, including Jermaine Burton, the transfer in from Georgia, and a lot of highly recruited freshmen that are coming in, and some other young guys that have started to make their mark already. So they're going to be good at wide receiver, don't you think, Rod?
I think so, and you know, you hope to see the continued development of Ja'Cory Brooks, Ajay Hall, who got an opportunity in the championship game. I mean, Ajay Hall is loaded with talent. You mentioned Jermaine Burton. I think he's John Mechie Part 2, maybe even a little more speed down the field. They've recruited some really young players with great speed. Isaiah Bond's coming in. Aaron Anderson is a name to really keep an ear out for. Now, he's a little bit smaller, you know, receiver. Gary, probably a slot guy, but when you talk about speed and explosiveness, he's got it. Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, Shaz Preston's a really outstanding incoming freshman as well. So they've recruited some guys, and again, there's some guys on the current roster that I didn't mention, but yeah, I think that they can certainly kind of piece together a really good wide receiver corps.
I do too. Thanks, Bill, for the phone call. Coming up on Tider Insider TV, we'll check in on Alabama gymnastics and more of your phone calls and emails. Again, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Phone lines, I'm told, are open, so give us a call now, 205-348-9882. We'll be right back. This past Friday night at Coleman Coliseum, Alabama gymnastics was awesome. They held the rare tri-meet as they welcomed in North Carolina and Western Michigan as well. But it was all Bama on this night. They got some great scores on really all of the events. They wound up winning it easily, 197.875. UNC had a 195.375. Western Michigan a 194.875. 197.875 for Bama. That is their high score of the season. Well, welcome back into Tighter Insider TV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Real quick mention on a couple of former Alabama coaches and players. Former assistant Jody Wright going to South Carolina as the tight ends coach. He coached for the New York Giants under Joe Judge the last couple of years. And former Alabama player Wes Neighbors. Used to call him Wesley. His dad, of course, Wes, was a great All-ACC center. His grandfather, Billy, was a great player at Alabama. Wes is going to Maryland to join Mike Loxley's staff to work with the secondary.
You know, on another note, you may have heard this. Lance Thompson, I understand, is
Yeah,
going to
Maryland as well.
Former Alabama assistant.
Yeah, how about that? All right, let's go back to the phone line. Let's talk to Eugene over in Leeds. Hey, Eugene.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Good to hear from you.
Alabama's biggest problem is they dribble the ball too much. They need to pass the ball. They pass it around, then if it's not open, they can reverse the ball. And that way they can get open. John Petty was good at catching and shooting, so I believe Alabama player will be good at catching and shooting as well.
Eugene, yeah, I mean, I think you got a point. I thought that during the Kentucky game. I mean, looking to dribble drive, but there's a lot of dribbling, a lot of guys just standing around. And, you know, again, they spread the floor. They're looking to penetrate and get to the rim or kick it back out. But the ball does sometimes stick, and maybe a little more passing might be good for that offense, Eugene. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. All right, I understand that's all the time we have for phone calls and emails for tonight. We appreciate you calling in on the program. And still to come, one of last year's basketball captains had a career high last week. I think you might know who it is. He is lighting up the NBA. We'll have that for you on a beautiful evening here on the University of Alabama campus. We'll be right back after this. Orleans Pelicans are just thrilled to have Herbert Jones. I mean, the fans love him. The front office loves him. The coaches love him. The players love him. And he finished off against the Nuggets the other night. 18 fourth-quarter points. Wow. And I want you to see this Euro step coming up here in just a minute against Jokic. Here it comes right here. This is a steal. Watch it, right? Oh, my gosh. That's nasty. What a year he's having. He's going to be in the future All-Star game coming up. All right, Herb Jones is lighting it up. No surprise there. Thank you for tuning in to Tighter Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Along with Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We're going to leave you with some video from Sunday night's NFL Pro Bowl, where 5 former Alabama players were in action. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week on Tighter Insider TV.